Welcome back to NAB Show 2018. This is day 3 of Wowza Studio Sessions. I'm Rob Baynard, Creative Director at LiveX, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Gauthier Dimond of Streamroot and Barry Owen of Wowza to talk about the challenges of the Zettabyte era. Now, guys, thank you for joining us today. It's Wednesday. Everybody's a little embattled from 2 difficult days of, being on the floor here at NAB. Are you excited to be here?
Really excited to be there and really excited to get home tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So Streamroot builds robust, scalable delivery networks that help coordinate traffic across billions of users, and I think I read that you have something like over 60,000 streams going at any given minute. Tell me a little bit about the background of Streamroot, and then we'll get into your partnership with the Wowza Tech Alliance and talk more broadly about the Zettabyte era.
Sure. So Streamroot was created 4 years ago by 3 students from the French MIT called Central, and it was actually their school graduation project. So they were really passionate about video streaming. They were part of it's the school that created the VLC project. So they were contributors to the VLC project. And they were always passionate by that notion of peer-to-peer that was created over the last 10, 12 years with companies like Octoshape. The notion that you could leverage some of the end-user assets to have a better network management when it came to those challenge of scaling video delivery. And the core issues with those first technology 10 years ago was that it required really specific encoders, specific ingest, specific players.
Right, yeah.
And then on the end user side, when you were loading the web page, you needed to download a plugin, which was kind of really a cumbersome process. So they were starting thinking about, is there a better way to do it that would be totally transparent to the end user as well as the content creator? And that's when WebRTC came to play. WebRTC basically was the solution that gave us the ability to integrate peer-to-peer with any video encoding process, any HTTP video format, and be totally transparent on the end-user device, nothing to install. So 2 years ago was when the technology was really ready for prime time, and we went to market. We raised our first $3 million in Europe and in the US. And we're starting going after tier 1 customers. Obviously, being from France, we started with European customers. So we start our first big tier 1s, Canal Plus, Dailymotion, TF1, big European broadcasters. And then last September, we raised another $3.5 million that basically would allow us to expand to the US market and start working with big US tier 1 as well as CDN provider.
Sure.
to work on solving that issue of network congestion.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a huge problem that everyone has had to deal with. In 2016 was the first time that we exceeded 1.2 zettabytes of data being carried in a given year across all public internet and global IP traffic, which also includes cell data and other things as well. But also in 2016, Wowza partnered with Streamroot as a part of the Wowza Tech Alliance and kind of forged a bond to share in this learning experience of how to manage all of this traffic. Barry, could you tell me a little bit about how Wowza is involved with working on traffic delivery issues?
So one of the things we certainly see with our customers, and the death of multicast and things like that, right? So particularly inside a large network. I've talked to many companies where it's like, we can't really do live video because everybody plays a stream and the network just goes to hell.
Right.
So it's like innovative solutions like leveraging, hey, your neighbor's got those chunks, why don't you just give them to me? The streamer guys come up with it, they make a huge difference in those scenarios. And I see it as a really, really super important thing for, as video becomes more and more prevalent within the enterprise especially. Right. It's like, you want to be able to sit at your desk and watch the video, or you want to be able to sit somewhere, without having to go into a room with 1,000 other people just to watch a video. So it's really innovative and it's very cool. So, with whatever we can do on the engine side to provide the hooks and the technologies for people like this succeed, it's a win for everyone.
Yeah. So some of the viewers may not know how peer-to-peer delivery works and how it works within your distributed network architecture, and walk us through that from a base level, just an overview, 5,000-foot view of what's happening with peer delivery.
Very good. So one of the specificities we have is that we're an hybrid solution. That means you cannot do peer-to-peer by itself. You need a content delivery or delivery platform like Wowza to be kind of like the backup and kind of like the foundation of the video delivery that we're going to do. So from a user experience, that's the best way to explain our technology. When you press play on a live event or VOD assets, typically the two first segments, the beginning really of that video experience is going to come from your origin server or your content delivery network. Why? Because it's the fastest startup time, and it also allows us on the peer-to-peer side to create a baseline of your user experience. What is really specific about us is that we're only going to activate peer-to-peer if we can bring value to the user experience. What that means is that during those first few seconds, we know exactly what is the user experience that you have with your current delivery platform.
Sure, yeah.
And peer-to-peer is going to be turned on only if we can reduce your buffering or increase the bitrate that you're going to be able to watch. So it's really a quality-based approach.
Nice,
And then
yeah.
once you start playing, you're going to be registered on our backend. We're going to know who you are, what you're watching, and then we're going to start connecting you with people that can share content with you. And that's where really the trick of the game is, because if I send you 10 people to share content with, I need to make sure that those 10 people are the most efficient to share content with. So the way we work today, we're having on average 20 million video sessions per day, and we feed that into our machine learning algorithm, which means like, I'm Barry, I'm in this hotel in Las Vegas, on that ISP I'm watching the same content. We're going to learn from your experience so that the next guy that is also on the same network in the same hotel in Vegas, we're going to have a subset of users that we know are going to be optimal to share content with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is easily configurable inside of Engine and Streamroot, and there's even direct integration between Engine and Streamroot. Can you talk a little bit, Barry, about how you configure peer accelerated delivery inside of?
Honestly, most of the smarts are on their end, right? I mean, we can deliver them HLS, we can deliver them Dash, whatever they need. And they've been very clever about how they've taken the WebRTC data channel to negotiate connections between peers. So as we don't do much of the heavy lifting at all. These guys came up with a very creative solution, and the like you said, the machine learning and the algorithm that they know how to match peers and when to share and when not to share is really creative and super fascinating technology.
Right, and this is needed basically because there is too much traffic to deliver, or not enough bandwidth in the area to deliver those packets of data. And I want to step back and talk a little bit about the size of a zettabyte for a second, because it's just a word that somebody throws out there, but they don't exactly realize it. I've got a couple of stats here that if each terabyte in a zettabyte were a kilometer, it would be equivalent to 1,300 round trips to the moon and back. And if each petabyte in a zettabyte were a centimeter, then we could reach a height 12 times higher than the Burj Khalifa. So hopefully that puts it a little bit into perspective of how much data we're actually talking about. And it took 40 years for us to get to this point of exceeding that amount of traffic. And, one of the things that I think is really interesting is, the challenges that it creates to CDNs and network infrastructures and just sheer global power infrastructure for all of these data centers to deal with that. And, in a sense, because you're able to capitalize on the peer-to-peer delivery, then you can alleviate some of the stress that happens in the servers that in big data centers and stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit to, how you're managing that from the Streamroot side?
Very good. So one of the things, and a lot of us came from the CDN space before joining Streamroot, so we know that there's different type of issue when it comes to those delivery, those capacity issues that they were mentioning. There's the macro issues, which are the size of the backbone, the overall capacity of the network, but most of the time, the poor user experience are going to come from micro issues, peering point congestion, specific networks that are not going to be good. So what we see, we have different approach. We are trying to focus really our technology with First, solving the micro issues. So we're going to be able to give the tools to broadcasters that have, a set of CDN platform, and we're going to be one of the tools in their toolbox to improve the delivery. So we're going to say, well, you're doing really well in New York, but you have an issue with Telmex in Mexico, for example. So we're going to try to encourage them to activate our technology in those specific region, either country or specific network where they know they have congestion issue, and that's going to be the first part of the help. One of the things also we launched this year, and that was part of our big announcement at AAB, is that we're trying to go even deeper and be able to limit peering in a certain network or a certain even physical location. So you were mentioning the ability of enterprise that had, wanted to do all-ends call or the VP of marketing calls and had issues. And basically, we're starting fine-tuning our technology to say, all right, we're going to limit the peer-to-peer experience within a physical building. So basically, we can also go deeper into the network and work on a smaller congestion point. Like if you have a 100 meg pipe to a building that has 500 employees, that's not enough to watch videos. So then we can select 10% of the user allowed to connect to the outside and then have peer-to-peer in place inside that physical location. So that's really from the network aspect. And then there's the country aspect, really, the macro level. When there's still today a region of the world that have really poor network coverage.
Of course.
That is their main limitation if you talk about APAC or Australia and New Zealand, for example, where we're going to be able here to have peer-to-peer at the scale of an entire country and lower the load on the trans-Pacific or trans-Atlantic links, and make sure that we can lower the load on the overall network by having peer-to-peer on a country level.
Wow, yeah. I mean, this guy is incredible, isn't he?
It's kind of like a hyper-local cache, right?
That is.
So it's like you're really optimizing the edge all the way down to the individual user's machine.
That is perfect.
It's brilliant. Yeah. I mean, what are some of the use cases that you're hearing from your customers, and like things that people, how did you figure out how this needed to be solved, basically?
You see it all the time, and as I said, it's 10 years ago we had multicast, right? We had multicast. We had heavy desktop players that could play multicast streams, and everybody was reasonably happy.
Yes.
And as that faded out and that went away, and you're talking about broad internet and no more multicast, then people were stuck. I have talked to numerous companies. I remember a few years ago I was talking to, I think it was Zillow, at a conference, and they're like, no, we tried to do video inside and our network just grinds to a halt. And it's like they just couldn't do it. And also, as people try to watch video in more geographic locations and be more remote and things like that, you have those last mile problems, and it's very difficult. So it's clearly a niche that has a need, and getting better quality, more reliable streaming is key for those very
It's really been a focal point from the very beginning of video streaming. I know we did an episode on Ready Take Live of the very first live stream ever to happen on the internet, which was actually a band that was formed by a group of engineers.
I thought you were going to say it was a cat video.
Yeah, no, it was a band that was formed by a group of engineers at Xerox PARC in Apple, very early days, called Severe Tire Damage. And they actually they went up just before the Rolling Stones did the Stones Cast, which was they tried to tout as the first ever live stream on the internet. And what happened was they used half of the total available bandwidth of the entire internet to broadcast on what they built called the M-bone, or multicast backbone, basically. And they actually had better success than the Rolling Stones did. They came up and said, hey, we're here, we're opening for the Stones, and they had no affiliation at all, and then they came back on after the concert and re-delivered it. So this is something that's been happening for a really long time, or coming for a really long time, and how we deal with delivering that video signal. And it was very choppy, I think about 6 frames a second, but the audio is good. And there's always something to be said for prioritizing audio over video when trying to deliver to the last mile of poor bandwidth.
Yep.
Is there anything that Streamroot is doing as far as prioritizing how that is packaged and delivered when you get down to that peer-to-peer last mile chunk of they can't support the video at this point, now what do we do?
So that's a really good question. So basically what we do, we don't interfere with the decision-making process of what quality
Okay,
you're
yeah.
going to watch. What we do is, because we're client-side, we're actually improving the bitrate decision mechanism, the LBR algorithm. We feed to the LBR information that we get from our peers about the user experience, the bandwidth, the bitrate that you watch. So basically what we're trying to do is, you have your regular ABR mechanism deciding what quality you're going to watch. And what we do is that we make it better by getting feedback from the peers and the users and the client-side statistics that we gather, and we feed that back to the algorithm so that it's able to make a better decision. So the goal, all of that, is exactly what you say, is that if I have just enough bandwidth to have the audio, I'm trying to give a heads up to the ABR mechanism that you can only get audio from the CDN, and us on the peer, we're not able to do better. So we're saying, all right, according to the network condition, we believe, yes, it's a really good idea that you switch to audio only.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's people will tolerate, choppy video to a certain extent, but if the audio is bad, then you have no chance.
It is amazing how that works. You have clean audio, people can suffer through a little bit of bad video.
Definitely, absolutely. So, by 2020, we are actually going to reach 40 zettabytes of total data. This is not network IP traffic, but just total data and size. What are some things looking forward to the future, Barry, on, it took us 40 years to get to this point, and it's going to exponentially grow from here because, with the rise of OTT and streaming networks delivering more and more content, video content that take up a lot of that data share, what are some things that we're looking to in the future, Barry, that maybe some new ways that we can deal with this size and scale?
I think you're going to see a couple things. You're certainly going to see next generation codecs that provide much higher quality for much lower bandwidth. I mean, in the last year, I've heard so much more about how people are concerned about bandwidth and how can we compress, and I think there's a lot of over delivery, if you will, right now, right? So, I don't need a 1080p stream on my phone.
Sure.
But that's what people are giving me. And in many cases, it's going to be optimizing to that very last thing and making sure that I'm only getting really the quality I really need. And, things like AV1 and some of the newer codecs are going to help with that a lot. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what's next after that. And, what can we do to really optimize that? Because, the CDNs can only scale so much eventually.
Sure. Yeah.
So technologies like the peer-to-peer stuff make a ton of sense because, I have a lot of storage on my local computer. Why can't I share that?
Yeah.
I don't need to be an Akamai edge or a large edge on a CDN everywhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. So that's all the time we have here. Really appreciate it, Gauthier and Barry, for joining me. Thanks for coming on Wowza Studio Sessions. We'll be right back from day 3 at NAB show, so stick around.